Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate life and the pursuit of happiness. We are live on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by Intrastate Pest Control, an Intrastate service company, a home's best friend. Intrastate Pest Control, an Intrastate service company. Judah Wickhauer's the fabulous director. Why don't we go to the studio camera and we welcome the always distinguished.
Thank you. Yeah.
The always reasonable.
Well,
the very humorous and funny Keith Smith.
You were doing really good until you went to reasonable. I don't know about that.
Should we ask your daughters?
I would ask Mrs. Smith that question.
7 Keith Smith, guys. These gentlemen, Neil Williamson and Sean Tubbs.
Hello.
On Real Talk. Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
So for those who may have not watched our previous longest running show ever, quick introduction to you guys. Neil, you first, and then Sean second, and then we'll dive into it.
Sure. Neil Williamson, president of the Free Enterprise Forum, a privately funded public policy organization focused on local governments in Central Virginia. We work diligently to take a look at what local governments are doing. Most of local government's power surrounds land use, and so we focus a great deal of attention on land use in the city of Charlottesville as well as the 5 counties that surround it.
So Google Free Enterprise Forum, these guys do awesome work. Neil does awesome work. They can always use a little extra help, financial help. So if you like what you're hearing, go ahead and throw a few bucks that way. And then Sean.
Yes, I'm Sean Tubbs. I'm an appreciator of the mascot for Interstate Pest Control, which I believe is the little mouse that says, "Aw, shucks."
Yeah, that's right, Sean.
So that is,
Look at him, huh?
Oh man, it's like every time I see that, I think, gosh, I wish I had mice just so I could call
Our cred with Interstate just went up, I think.
That was great, Sean Tubbs.
But Sean Tubbs, I'm not sure what I do anymore, but journalist.
But you
reporter,
do it well.
This has been sort of an off week. I've only done 4 newsletters, and so it's. But there's a lot going on. Things don't really slow down in this community, as you know, and but maybe next week.
So, Town Crier, Google
Oh
Town
yeah,
Crier.
so, yeah, that's it. The newsletter is called Charlottesville Community Engagement. The umbrella company for all the stuff I do is Town Crier Productions, but that's the main thing. And in the future, there might be some other things, but for now, it's a newsletter and a podcast.
So I'm
Let me throw this in these
Sure,
things
sure.
here. You got 4 car presidents, current or former, watching right now.
a little nervous,
Your
huh?
hands out right there.
Go, Neil.
4 of them. Quinn Beckham says, "Good morning, friends." Daniel Pettit, mustache and Pettit.
Yeah.
No good morning for Jerry or Keith.
It's
Neil and Sean.
He's a smarter guy.
Mustache,
He's a pretty
Pettit.
smart dude. Yeah, so I'm thinking to myself, since you got 4 car presidents, I have to be a little nice to you because we just don't,
You're always nice to him.
I love him to death. But on Sean, on your Town Crier, I'm a proud supporter, a proud
Thank you very much.
sponsor of it. If tell folks how they can actually help you do what you do so well.
Yeah, so the most important thing is more subscribers, and either paid or unpaid. Obviously, I'd like to be paid, but the whole point of what I'm doing is to produce a community resource that looks at this entire community. And in fact, you were in a recent podcast when you hosted the Regional Housing Partnership thing a couple weeks ago, and there was a party going on at CAR. And it made it really difficult to hear what you were saying, but it sounded like a really cool party. So, good guys.
It was a cool party. You could hear that actually.
Oh yeah. No, it was,
damn, I'm sorry.
Oh no. I wanted to be there.
Yeah, well, it was the sad part was I was doing that and everybody else was partying.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I kind of missed the party. Talking about partying, I was reading your July 8th newsletter. Petron, is that tequila? Are we referring tequila as?
Oh, sorry, no, that's Patreon. So basically, one way to pay me is through the Patreon. That funds the general research, and that's about maybe a quarter of my revenue at the moment. So I am sort of treading water at the moment, but it's good times. This is an interesting time to be a journalist. I think the best days of journalism are ahead of us as we figure out ways to pay people like myself, and I have people who want to work for me, but I have to pay them first. So it's a question of that, and of course, it's an interesting time. There's no shortage of things to talk about.
What do I know?
No, it's a
I got it.
platform that you can do fundraising through when you create content.
Correct.
Not tequila, although we would drink the tequila.
Yeah.
I want to throw this to you. Why do you think the future of journalism is brighter? Why do you think that?
I think it goes in cycles, and I think we're sort of in a time when we're trying to figure out, like, this is what comes next. We have a newspaper that is kind of nationally owned at this point. We've got 2 television stations that are trying, and this is just in this market, 2 television stations that are trying to figure out new identities because they have new owners. There's CVille Weekly, which I do some freelancing for. There's Charlottesville Tomorrow, which seems to be doing quite a lot of good work at the moment. And so, I think trying to figure this stuff all out, because at the end of the day, there's a public who needs to be educated and on what's happening. And I think that Neil does that from his advocate's perspective. I do what I do from a neutral perspective, trying to get people information and basically what's going on, because there's so much happening. And what really needs to happen is more people need to read and participate and get engaged, and that's why it's called Charlottesville Community Engagement.
So a little caveat to that, actually have a client from Arizona that called me who watched your last show a month ago on Spotify 2 days ago.
Listen to it on Spotify.
Listen to it, I apologize.
Yeah.
Listen to it on Spotify and called me. So I guess I owe you a referral or something.
That's
on
great.
that end of it. But to go to that point, that's where this is going here. But I'm desperately getting into this white paper that you created. Density deferred, density denied, and let's try to do this without us either ending up in jail or pissing too many people off. Those who have not have read it, do yourself a favor. Get it? It's on the Facebook. It's all over the internet. You can find it. We have been preaching this for 2.5 years now about affordable housing and density. So I'm going to get out of the way a little bit. This is your baby. Give it a little shout out for it.
Thanks for the prep. You can also find it at freeenterpriseforum.org under the reports tab. The idea really was to take an examination of completed projects. There are several projects that are in the pipeline that have not completed what's called the entitlement process. They may have some other things that they still need to do in terms of site plans, but the entitlement process is where there are discretionary approvals. And so we took 3 recent projects, looked at the number of units they originally proposed, then the number of units they were granted. The difference between those 2 numbers was 56.5%. Fewer units were approved than were proposed. There are good reasons for that. Some people that said, why didn't you do 10 case studies? Well, the report already runs 37 pages with 63 footnotes. So I think 10 studies would be a bit much. And I think that the 3 chosen were relatively representative of projects that are going on in the area. But the real bottom line is that that density lost is almost 250 families that will not be living here. And that's the part that gets lost sometimes when we talk about density numbers and you see planning diagrams. Those are people that can't live here, period. We've reduced the capacity from what the comp plan said it could be to what this new rezoning says it could be, and in the process, we lost 248 families.
So to dovetail a little bit to Sean's work, Sean did a real good write-up on the new Albemarle County Board of Supervisors housing plan, housing policy. Let's see if we can tie the 2 together, right? So knowing the knowledge base you did on these 3 projects and what is coming down the pike, if those projects came in now, would we have lost those units or we would have gained units? How would it have been different? What do you think?
Well, the plan's not going to affect what happens at the legislative approvals. In all 3 of those cases, you had vehement opposition from neighbors. The 3 examples I think are used, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was one in Crozet, Adelaide, which went by right, which meant that it defaulted to the existing zoning. There was I can't read, Neil. I mean, Neil has handed me something, but I need my specs, and I don't have them. Shucks.
Oh, I just thought you couldn't read.
No, well, I can't.
You see all those tabs there? Those are where
there you go.
Those are where the pictures are, where the words are.
But in all 3 of those, I think the other one was, one of them was
Royal Fern?
Royal Fern, yes, that's right, which is now the Albemarle Business Campus, which has gone, all commercial in that particular unit. But in all cases, I think that obviously I'm not an advocate at this juncture, and hopefully no other future juncture. I think in all cases, you do have this dance that happens, and I think that part of it is that how much does the Board of Supervisors listen to that? I think the real test of this is going to be an upcoming development called RST, which is all apartments up in Forest Lakes. Is it Forest Lakes? Yeah. And I think that, and then that is a project which has received significant opposition. Even the other night, Scott Elliff with Forest Lakes, who I believe has been on this show, he spoke to the Board of Supervisors and tried to say, he's actively lobbying against this. The question is, will the supervisors, having passed this housing plan, take the needs that are embodied in that plan, which says that we need something like 2,000 more units above what's, But I think that, to Neil's point, I think that's really the question, is that I think it's right. It's correct to say that the community does not have those houses, but the reasons why are a little bit more complex because, just for one last thing I'll say, earlier this week I reported about the Granger property, which is a 69-acre parcel just south of the Fontaine Research Park. That developer is deciding to go by right because in a lot of ways, even though the potential for money is there, it's just easier. If in the Adelaide example that Neil mentions in this density deferred, density denied. I can't read without my glasses.
That's great alliteration, Neil.
I'm telling you, Neil is the master at that stuff.
So I was thinking to title this, density, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but we've used that a couple of times. So I
like his alliteration.
I think we just went with yours.
Well, the thing to note in tying back to Sean's reporting on the housing policy, there were 4 aspects of the housing policy that have been deferred implementation, and
let's talk about that.
Those 4 aspects are moving from what is now required for rezonings is 15% affordable housing to 20% affordable housing. What also has been deferred until the incentives have been worked out is the length of time the housing must remain affordable, which is 30 years for rental, 40 years for sale, as well as, I'm lacking the last item, but the point that the Granger property brings up and that Adelaide also does is that all of those proposals and those ideas in there are about rezonings. If you make rezonings harder to do, people aren't going to rezone the land.
Sure.
They're going to go forward by right, large lot zoning. We're going to lose density. We're going to lose diversity. And your community is going to look much more like what Lloyd Snook said last week, where he said that the city runs the risk of becoming Palo Alto.
He said that.
Where the median income is $160,000 a year and the median home sale price is $3 million.
Yeah. So we talk about this all the time on the show, and this density question, it's never easy, right? This is not an easy. If it was easy, the 4 of us wouldn't be here having this conversation, right? And everybody's got a little bit of different opinions on all this stuff. But I know this much, and I'm a big proponent of missing middle, and I think you talk at a great lengths about that in your white paper. But if we don't do something about that, we know what's going to happen, right? What's happening will just continue along. And of course, there's, what about schools and all these different things, which is a great discussion to have. And we need to have those discussions. And we need to look at these parts of it, but not to start that ball rolling down the hill. You're only going to get by right. You're only going to get McMansions, right? And there's something that I'm going to report in, and we're going to do a show about it later. We're starting to see the real estate market make a bit of a change, and it's a pretty dramatic change. And what's happening now is folks are walking away from deals that they wrote 30 to 60 days ago because they were doing sight unseen, right? They were doing no home inspections. Now they're trying to figure out a way to get out of the deal because the inventory is picking back up. The other thing that's happening is we're potentially losing a deal because a guy working up in New York was going to move down here. The New York shop said, no, you now need to be, they're changing this or it's changing drastically. So all these triggers are starting to happen in the market, and if we don't figure out rapidly how to increase density, it will be, I don't think it'll be Palo Alto, but the trend that we're on will not stop.
Right, well, the concerns that exist, I really see a road that divides, whereby if you don't allow the density, And you have to recognize that means that your carrying capacity for your development area, which is less than 5% of Albemarle County, is reduced because you aren't allowing the density that you said you wanted. When are you going to expand the development area? In this research, and I knew this years ago and I'd forgotten it, the first development area was put out in 1971. That plan was 14,700 acres larger than the plan we have today. And that doesn't include the reduction due to Biscuit Run, the reduction due to stream buffers, and other adjustments. When you look at, I know Keith's had the joy of going to Portland a couple of times to do some planning work. We've really done nothing to the development area effectively since 81, 82. There's been a few lots here or there. Portland, in the last 30 years, has expanded their development area 36 times.
It's a little different, though, because in that case, though, and I don't know, it's hard to make a direct comparison because Portland is in Virginia, and Virginia has the difference between cities and counties, and I think their annexation, is that how it works there?
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit in the weeds on that, but
which is legal, by the way, now.
It's different.
Yay, July 1.
Sometimes.
Hey,
good jokes.
Look at you, huh? I think you're in the wrong business, man.
I don't know.
I think you should be a stand-up guy.
I'm
Good.
a
I
something.
like the zingers.
But
And then they just come in this deadpan look, and you're like, okay, is he serious or whatever?
But I think to Neil's point about the growth areas is that the reasons where there were those contractions from 71 to 80, a lot of it is infrastructure based. And a lot of it was about the cost of water and sewer and getting water and sewer, which allows you your density. I think that's the other side of this, is that in so much of this, in many of these places that are going, not so much the Crozet one, I don't know as much about their water supply system, but the one we have here, we expanded the dam, we expanded the water supply, we've got big sewer interceptors that can handle a lot more through some of these areas. So in other words, we prepared for where the development should go, and you can have a large amount of people living on the land because, everything ostensibly goes down a pipe.
Yet,
I wasn't going there.
Yet,
you went there, though.
According to the 2019 Central Virginia Housing Study and Needs Report, commissioned by the Regional Housing Partnership that someone at the table has an impact on, 88% of the region's land is zoned for single family. We have the capacity for much of the infrastructure. Only 3% of the land is zoned for multifamily housing.
So to go back to this Portland, Washington State, I've been not doing this for a while, I've been doing this for about 35 years. Historically, housing trends always go from west to east. I don't know why it is, but it always, as the markets go, it's just historically the way it goes. The thing on Portland, Oregon, the state of Oregon, at the state level, took a leadership role in this stuff, and they kind of filtered its way down. A prime example, those realtors are watching, Oregon is the first state to say it's illegal to do love letters. So what a love letter is if I'm the buyer trying to buy Jerry's house, I'm now not allowed to write a love letter to. That is illegal. Crosses all kinds of fair housing, and we're going to have a whole special show about that. But the point I'm trying to make is, historically, that's the reason I track what's going on the West Coast so closely, because it does work its way over this way. It may take a few decades. In the case of the Great Housing Depression, it was awfully fast, but it started in California, right, out west, and it just moved its way all the way over this way. So, Sean, am I helping you, persuading you to come on our team on more density?
Well, I mean, I'm neutral either way. I mean, like the way I see it is that there's a balance of many different forces with every single land use application. And as a person who writes about that story and doesn't take a side, it's a powerful discussion. There is. People don't like change, and they don't know how the system works. And I think that what needs to happen is, and so much of it is, we've talked about this before, it's push-pull and conflict. I feel what needs to happen is the story needs to be told about, well, what is this community? How does it all fit together? And in some cases it is, how do the roads work? How do you then do it? And I think in the city in particular, it hasn't done such a good job of using the resources that it has been given to make some of that stuff happen. The Belmont Bridge, for instance, there's a notice to proceed.
Yep.
It is moving forward, but it took a while. The West Main Streetscape. Now, what's going to happen is really interesting is that as the University of Virginia, which is the driver here, does things, that has an effect on things, and I think that they are taking advantage of the infrastructure improvements. Just this, I think last night, Emmett Street was closed overnight to replace a gas line to make way for the new complex that the university is building there. I mean, that's the thing. Now, why can the university do all of that stuff? They don't have to worry about zoning. So I think that
they only have if it's foundation-owned property. So this is clear to get out there because we at one point want to dovetail into the UVA housing thing because I specifically asked this question of the UVA team. If it's currently owned by the University of Virginia, they do not need to go through zoning.
Yep.
If it is owned by the foundation, it has to go through no different than anybody else, ARB, Architectural Review Board, rezoning and all that stuff. So, this was a question that I threw out multiple times. I finally got an answer to it. So I just want to be clear for the folks who are watching or listening that there's really two different property pools that UVA has.
At the same time, I think that the foundation doesn't mostly develop a lot of their ancillary properties, so like office space, anything that's directly tied to the university's functions generally comes underneath the banner of the rectors pretty quickly. And there's properties to watch. So for instance, one of the properties as the UVA team does its work is the property just south of the university medical center. On Grove Street, Grove Square, not Grove Square. Well, that was
Grove Street.
Yeah,
Grove.
And they actually broke the three-party agreement from 1986 by purchasing that land directly, which they're not supposed to do. But of course, I think a lot of that is, I think that we also still have a community that doesn't I think we're in a new era for how these three entities fit together. And sometimes you have politicians in certain communities, not saying which one, maybe it's all of them. I don't know. Shucks. Interstate. Sorry. But
A home's best friend.
Exactly. But I think that
you're just gonna have to come on and do the plugs.
I'll do it. But I would say though that just all of these things, I think that's why it's important to pay attention to all of it. This to me is my sports. In a lot of ways, because it's story by story, parcel by parcel, and there are success stories for density. I'm house sitting this week and just walking around, and I'm in the Locust Grove area, and just seeing that, you think it's a single family residence, but there are clusters of density in there. Back in Fry Spring, there's clusters of areas where density was put in through these planned unit developments, but did it lead to affordability? And I think the affordability question is always going to be a tricky one. But yet there are, so yesterday, in the newsletter yesterday, for instance, there's 5 affordable housing developments in this community. They all got extra money from the governor. And I think that's
substantial. He contributed $21 million, if I remember this, or allocated.
Yeah, right. But the thing
But it's going to cost. It's going to cost. And I think that and it's an ongoing cost. And the question is, how much is the community willing to put up with that for a long period? And some of the issues in this affordable housing plan, the terms of affordability, those are going to be some deals, and so for instance, the public housing redevelopment that's going on right now, that's a special case that will not apply to many situations where the people who were financing a lot of that, they wanted to make sure that their property taxes were covered, and so it was a special deal. It's so tenuous potentially, and making those deals and getting that stuff to work is really difficult. So, we basically need I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but there needs to be a market correction of something for that to happen, but it's not likely that's going to happen.
But neighborhood opposition, it's probably 7 years ago now, but the Fry Springs neighborhood came up in arms about having duplexes that were rentals, and they went to council and tried to get basically duplexes and rentals eliminated from Fry Springs.
Yeah.
The Free Enterprise Forum took a strong position. These are property rights. You can do it. You should be allowed to do it, and it works. It creates housing affordability. And the folks in the duplexes in the end won, and they stayed there renting and moving forward. To Sean's point, I want to make certain that I say that the Free Enterprise Forum does not endorse projects.
Sure.
These projects, the reason we chose some of the completed one was because we didn't take a position on the projects. It is important, though, and instructive to look at what those projects represent from a policy point of view. And so, when you look at the policies, look into late afternoon Wednesday when the Board of Supervisors was discussing getting more power from Richmond to put new recordation taxes on transfers of property so that they can create a dedicated fund rather than having to actually allocate funds from the general fund to to affordable housing. That's a chicken's way out. If you can't make it happen, make it in competition, you need to make those decisions. That's what you're elected to do. Making housing more expensive does not make it more affordable.
So the key to that whole policy, in my opinion, is this incentive package. That's the key. And I can tell you, because I'm in some of the rooms, they have the right people at the table, but they're struggling, they meaning the two bodies or the two groups, to kind of communicate. And we're helping with that process with the Regional Housing Partnership. But that's where it lies, in my opinion. It lies with incentivizing the private sector to try to help solve this problem. And I think they can do that, but there's just a little bit of a language problem going on. Is that making any sense, Neil?
It does. I've been involved in some of the side meetings with some of the principals in this, and had a conversation yesterday with a senior county employee who mentioned the idea that they have some ideas they want to bring forward. We've talked about it on this program with regard to tap fee reductions, or rebates of permit fees, other ways, a land trust, other ways that you can dramatically move the needle, and how to do that with a private-public partnership. It can't be all on the development community, or it goes all on the buyer of a rezoned home, and then that parcel doesn't get rezoned, and it gets developed in the manner in which the zoning is today, which is large lot, single-family zoning.
So a public-private partnership is a marriage. I joke around with my wife being my better 7/8, but in reality, we both work together, equal benefits. There is no one that's better than the other. If one gets a little bit better than the other, the marriage is, in my opinion, going to not work out so well. So you're 100% right. The county has to come up to the table. Part of the problem with the county end of it is they frankly don't understand it. They don't understand what it takes to produce a development.
Well, in to fairness, in the city, we had a city councilor in a public meeting ask for a line item to be removed from the pro forma that the consultant brought forward because there should be no profit in any project.
Yeah, no.
That isn't not understanding. That's a philosophical difference of opinion.
Yeah, I'm using the word not understanding. You can use whatever it is, but the problem is that, to quote Cool Hand Luke, there was a failure to communicate.
I love hard-boiled eggs.
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask Sean this question. Why did you allude to, you said market correction, and I think you alluded to housing crash or bubble burst for what we may need around here. Why did you allude to that?
Oh, I just think in general, it's just like it's very expensive. Like right now, the market prices for most single-family homes, that existing inventory in the city at least, are still, I think that I'm a little bit lagging behind, I think, from where Keith is, but that they're selling for a good 17 to 25% over the assessment, and there's a lot of homes in single-family neighborhoods that are being picked up, probably sight unseen, because the other thing in the city of Charlottesville is we do have this discussion about the future land use map and all the potential, which is on a different scale from what's happening in the county. And I think that the city might be where you get some of the density. But going back to the market correction thing, it's just, I bought my house in 2008, and I'm not as smart as you all in terms of how all these numbers work. But we bought that house at $220, and I think it probably could have gotten it for $190 if we'd waited a couple months. That's probably not going to happen this time around. But then again, we also, as you said, the market's changing. The pandemic is
so let's define changing, okay? This is important to clarify. So it's going from absolute insanity to just insanity now, right?
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, but what the market is doing is not allowing the firefighters, the teachers, the diversity in the community you're seeing more and more, less and less diversity.
Absolutely.
As the market, it kind of expands. And one way to address that lack of diversity is to change building product.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just to finish this, Sean's this market thing. There is not a balloon. There is not an implosion. There is not a 2008, and we've covered it on the show. There's multiple reasons why. There'll be an adjustment in the market. Things will go back to, let's say, normal, whatever normal is on that end of it. But this is why I'm personally so passionate about density. I'm passionate about affordable housing policies, because this aircraft carrier, instead of being full throttle, is going to be in 3/4 throttle, but it's still going.
Yeah,
and we need to help these folks.
And I think it's, again, it's from my perspective, well, not from my perspective, but from the work I do, it's parcel by parcel, application by application. And I think that is, it is. And I think that a lot of folks will say sometimes, oh, it's only a handful of houses that are affordable, but that stuff does add all up after a while. And I don't want to name the specific example of this, but, there was one in February that came before the council. And the developer in that situation offered much more than what was on the existing policy, and it was denied on a 3-2 vote because, we don't need to get into all of that. But,
sure.
But will that continue to happen again? I mean, sometimes
Elections matter.
But also
Elections
sometimes I think when we get into these rezonings, it becomes us versus them, and it becomes we want to win. And it becomes less about how do we all win together. And I think that's maybe kind of part of the issue here too, because I think that, when the RST development comes back up, Forest Lakes is going to hit them with everything. They're going to hit them with everything. The Planning Commission, the first time around, they weren't so happy with it. They allowed it, actually, they were this close to recommending denial, the developer pulled it back. But I believe this last time it was, Neil, you know more than I do, that was a unanimous recommendation?
6-1.
No,
6-1.
6-1.
Yeah, Randolph.
Randolph, well.
No Cabrini Green.
No Cabrini
Greens.
Greens. Yeah.
Not this time.
Yeah, but I think though so that's the question.
What's up, Scott?
So with that one, Breezy Hill, I believe, goes back to which is an item in Glenmore. This is a rezoning that is now, again, it's gone from 180 to 130 to 80, and there is significant neighborhood opposition to even those 80.
And to be fair, in that piece, the gross density for that project is 1 unit an acre. Now, not all of those acres are developable, but that's the gross density is 1 unit an acre in your development area. Is that an effective use of development area land?
Well,
You want to handle that?
yeah. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Yeah, you want to handle that one?
Hey, Scott.
But also,
So
too,
how about them Nats?
I'm sidestepping that one.
I watched the game last night with my mother. It was a lot of fun. She made some lasagna. It was excellent.
Oh, wow.
But
I didn't eat breakfast.
sorry about that.
Lasagna.
Breakfast is right there.
Yeah, it's here.
So let's
I don't know
go
if it's
back
sponsored,
to.
though.
I got it upside down, brother.
Oh, well.
Let's go back to process, and let's go back to the RST or whichever RST project on that. It kind of worked, right? What happened is the developer read the plans, the comprehensive plans, the Route 29 plan, put a proposition, put a plan out there. The public said no, or said some, I want this, I want that, staff, whatever, and they recalibrated their plan and brought it back, which they thought worked well. They felt good with it. The RST folks felt good, and that's how they got to 6.
But I didn't see Scott Elf and others endorsing it.
Yeah, and you're not going to make everybody happy,
Right.
brother.
Right.
I've been doing this for 35 years. You're just not going to make everybody happy. But the system worked. I'm just talking about the system.
So the system works when the density is lowered.
Well, I would also say the system has
No,
fully
and
played
I'm a
out yet.
proponent of density. I'm trying to play devil's advocate.
You're
for
saying
the
they came to what looks like kind of a compromise.
Well,
Yeah.
so it's different because that implies that both sides are communicating and negotiating. What happens is one side kind of reads the tea leaves, which is the developer, figures out, okay, this is what public is saying, this is what staff's saying, this is what we think they mean, right? And then they bring it out. In this case, they won, right? In this case,
Well, it's not over
yet.
yet.
Not over
Still
yet.
got
well,
to-
no, in the planning
You still
commission.
need 4 votes.
I'm talking about the planning commission.
I think
Okay.
I'm not
it's
talking about-
important to recognize and it's mentioned in the white paper, that politically this is a very complex issue.
Well, without doubt.
Albemarle County is represented across the board by Democrats right now.
Sure.
However, many of these proposals that have come forward have died on a 3-3 vote. There is not a monolith of thinking on that dais. And it's important to recognize it's not a Democrat-Republican issue. It is a philosophical issue on how we grow forward.
Sure. It's all about vision, and three folks had a different vision than the other three folks, and both sides, because I've been in that seat numerous times, it's my job to try to sell my vision or convince my vision. The opposition is their vision, and there's winners and there's losers. But part of the problem is if we don't have the base package right, if we don't have the base rules right, and they're a little vague, and they are vague, right? Where if we increase this density, these boxes are a lot easier to check, right? If we do this missing middle zoning like they've done out west, and we talk about this, and we check these boxes, it works. But I think we're kind of doing a little circular conversation here at the moment.
Well, to circle to something else, though, I'll just say the more complex it gets for developers with that to qualify with that incentives package, we only have to go back and look at Biscuit Run.
Sure.
Because back under a previous system, when there was the proffer system, where basically there was a dance sort of going back and forth, and localities had a lot more power to say,
extortion.
We kind of want to see. I'm not doing a funny voice for that one, but
Little Mouse or anything like that?
I believe that document was what, Neil, about 43 pages long?
At least.
I mean, it was a very long thing, and yes, in the case, there was a board of supervisors that wanted all of that, but the development didn't happen. And I think that is something where, it's interesting because if you go, have you guys been down that road, 5th Street Extended, down to Southwood? I mean, that area is going to look very different in a few years. Just like the Forest Lakes neighborhood is starting to fill out and look what the Places 29 map kind of said it was going to look like. Because there is the RST that we talked about, but there's all this stuff happening. What I think is missing is sort of what are these places? And I think that's sort of, is there's opposition about who's going to live there, and there's an us versus them, and I think that again, at the end of the day, we're building our future whether we like it or not.
So
the question is, what's it going to look like, and how many people are going to be there?
And how long will it take to build? When was North Point approved by Albemarle County, John?
2006.
That's exactly right.
I just saw this morning that the first phase of North Point for one of the builders has sold out.
Yep.
The first phase. So 2006 to now, to when they had their first sales. I mean, those aren't completed sales.
No, that was from approval.
Yeah.
From approval.
That doesn't talk about what went on. The start
Right.
time,
Yeah.
which was about 10, 12 years, somewhere
Right,
total.
back when it was the Brass project.
Well, that was another one that was, I think, is they didn't have as many proffers, but that gets back to that time. They had a lot going on, and but they're also building, a future. How big is that parcel? It's a huge lot.
Massive.
It's huge.
Yeah. That was actually the first place I lived in this community. I lived in a house that's now been demolished to make
Didn't
way
they burn
for
your house
degrading.
down?
They did. They burned my house down as a controlled burn. And
Did you attend?
I did not. I probably would have cried because again, it's like people don't like change. And when I lived in that place, it was on beautiful rolling land, and now and the land's still there, but the forest is gone. People don't like change. And
to this comment.
I just want to get to the change thing real
got
quick.
a car president comment.
A change thing real quick. Were you here before they built Forest Lakes?
I was not.
Yeah.
I'm a newbie. I've only been here since '99.
Got it. So
2000 for me, 88 for him.
87. So
We're all transplants.
we all are transplants, but the
You're
point
a damn Yankee.
I'm a damn Yankee
Yeah.
because I stayed. But what I wanted to get at is I remember all the hoopla before Forest Lakes actually became Forest Lakes, what it is now. And it's just kind of this cyclical thing that happens, and it's interesting. Some of the folks that are opposing this particular project now that's living in Forest Lakes, I'm wondering how they would feel if that project didn't get approved some decades ago.
If you read the Adelaide case study, you'll
Yeah.
see there are several residents in a neighboring
Corey Farm, is it?
that's it. That were adamantly opposed to the idea of
development.
The development because it had higher density than Quarry Farms did.
Correct. So, I mean, this is human nature, right? You know, and I'm not pointing.
People are opposed to change.
I'm not exactly right. I'm not pointing fingers because when you do that, 3 of them are coming back to you. But it's just something to keep in mind.
So Quentin Beckham. Quentin Beckham says, I often wonder, is perfect simply the enemy of good when it comes to housing? There's always the question of traffic, utilities, schools, et cetera, and in the meantime, the housing deficit continues to increase and workers are pushed further from their jobs. It would seem at some point we, the municipality, would be creating our own issues with the lack of tax base and other inherent economic drivers. And I'm not trying to say those issues I listed are not real and should not be addressed. And then he finishes by saying, and if we cannot get to housing affordability, how will we ever get to affordable housing?
So it's funny that Quentin mentioned that. I read I'm going to give a shout out to Jesse Rutherford out in Nelson County. And I won't read the whole post, but he did a real interesting post this morning about affordable housing. And so Nelson County is now having this discussion about NIMBYism, about no affordable housing in that. So if we're having it in Charlottesville and Albemarle, and if we're all agreeing we're driving till we qualify or we fly till we qualify, now we're having to struggle in Nelson County, which is a rock star of a county as far as housing is concerned. Where are we going to go? Where does it stop?
Well, if you don't build it, they will still come. If you accept the growth projections and reject increased density in the geographically limited development areas, you're pushing that development out into the rural areas or into the outlying localities. Today, according to that study by the Housing Partnership, 1,400 people drive from Augusta County to their jobs in Albemarle and Charlottesville.
But this isn't special to this area. Other places have this issue. It's the same as this is an American phenomenon. And the question is that, what I would like to see and what I really want to see from this administration and the city government is I want better numbers. I want to be able, so for instance, it's really interesting because Albemarle County is able, and this week's consent agenda had the building report and the certificate of occupancy report, and it clearly lays out what got built and where it got built. As I said, I'm house sitting, and I'm on River Road. There's an apartment complex that's been built up on River Road. So I think that what we really need is data to see what is getting built in the city. Now, I know we can ask for it, but the city is sometimes distracted by other things. But the question really is, it's look at the pockets of neighborhood that have, a lot of stuff has been built. Is it effective? And because I do think that there's a lot of skepticism that, okay, let's say you enable a lot more development in the city. Does it automatically become affordable? What are the interventions to stop it? I mean, that's really it. Is that if somebody's willing to pay for the unit, it's going to drive up the cost. And I think it's how do you have what the Housing Advisory Committee used to call interventions. They got away from that term, but I think that's really it.
Well, if you have density, you don't naturally have affordability. But if you don't have density, you naturally have unaffordability.
That's definitely true.
I wrote down that quote, and I hope I can
It's a
steal.
Variation of Field of Dreams.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal that.
How about this one for you guys? This is from Twitter. Sean and Neil, if the upzoning happens in the city of Charlottesville, what is the likelihood it's going to happen in Albemarle County as well?
I think they're two different communities. I think I would say that though I think that this is a generational shift. I think that you will begin to see this dynamic begin to change over the next 5-10 years as a younger generation that's coming up. They're not resistant to this, and I think I think that we're 3 decades into the 21st century. The community is changing. It has changed, and I think that likely, over time, the question is where and on what scale. I think that you're likely to see it kind of happen closer in. I mean, look at Stonefield, for instance. Stonefield, 10 years ago, the first store opened. Now there's residential there. I don't know how much exactly is there, but the number's going up. There's a lot. Well, and there's that new stuff that's going in there too. And then if you think about, well, how do the apartment complexes and how does Commonwealth Avenue? I mean, I think there's a lot of infill inside of Albemarle's urban ring, and I do think that the hydraulic CAC in that area, that's, I think, the area where you have people who are receptive to it to some extent. The question is that who gets involved? I mean, Neil, are you a fan of the Albemarle Community Advisory Committees?
Oh, CACs.
Yeah.
Well, when the CACs were founded, I said this is a bad idea.
Okay, so no, I guess.
And when they were given the opportunity to spend money like a
Why did you
elected
go that
board,
way?
Because I had
said
to.
it was a
I
bad
had to.
idea.
He's just starting.
But see, I
And
would
so
say
now when
yes.
CACs take votes about projects, I think that's a bad idea. They are simply asbestos for the planning commission and for the board of supervisors.
Did you
to
just
keep
say
them away from
asbestos?
fire.
That was good.
But
So-
in,
so
answer
Niels-
in answer to Jerry's question, or the question from Twitter,
Oh, yeah.
the answer is elections matter.
Yeah.
And right now, looking at the election in Charlottesville, I believe that whoever is elected in November will have the opportunity to vote on a zoning amendment, and it matters. And based on the conversations I've had with three of the candidates, I have not really talked to Yaz, I think that some increase in density is going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In Albemarle, I don't know what, there's only one announced candidate for next cycle, but there are no,
Steve Harvey announced too.
oh, has he?
He
Okay.
announced on this set.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
there's two
there's
announced
two,
candidates
yeah.
for next cycle. I had someone in my office yesterday, and I said, well, elections matter and contested elections matter, and we don't have one this year in Albemarle, which is a...
It's terrible. It's a travesty.
It is a travesty.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that Albemarle will move slower. It always does.
So he alluded to urban ring, and if the upzoning happens in Albemarle, if Albemarle follows suit of Charlottesville, you kind of alluded to it being maybe in the urban ring of Albemarle.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a lot of redevelopment opportunities, especially along Commonwealth, closer in to hydraulic. But you also have at least... you do have at least one planning commissioner and one supervisor who has sort of subtly hinted at wanting to expand in that area. So that's kind of why I throw that out there, and I don't think it's a secret. I think, though, that, a lot of it is going to depend on, again, like, where's the water? I mean, where is the water and sewer capacity going to be? And I think that's, is a big issue, because it's expensive to run those pipes, and there is a lot of backlog of capital projects as it is. So even if you were to expand the area, you can't just grant away the tap fees all the time, because somebody's got to pay to build the stuff. Right. But I think that strategically, it's like with everything. I'm less interested in that question as I am, how do we knit the parts that are already there together? I was kind of... and like what I mean by that is the amenities, the transit, the parks, the trails, all that stuff. That's what I'm really fascinated by, because it's all right there. But it has to do with property owners too.
Nothing happens without a willing property owner.
So you've got three quadrants of I don't want to diss them, but you've got 20th century shopping centers, let's say. And Rio Hill is in the midst of a transformation now, which is really just a facelift for whatever they're going to do next. The question is, will those places decide at some point that, hey, let's get into the residential game? Currently, that's a lot of acreage that's not. But again, we talked earlier about us versus them. I think that sometimes there's still a perception that it's us versus them and that the county's out to get us. And I think until we can get past that, and that's going to take leadership from somebody. Who? I don't know.
What about the Seminole Square property, that discussion?
Well, did you see
that's moving forward, I believe, and I have not been able to do it, but I believe there's a by right application, or at least it's in the midst of being submitted for that shopping center. That is moving forward from what I'm told. But you're correct, that took a long time. This was a situation where the Great Eastern Management Company came forth with a plan to redevelop that with about 350 units or so. And there was a counselor who had, because it didn't conform exactly to what the small area plan said, it wasn't just that. The reason that project didn't go forward is that they had a lease. Kroger had a long-term lease on that building. They were supposed to originally move the middle Kroger, as I like to call it, up to where the Giant used to be. And they have that lease. But I'm told that situation's gone away now. But again, I probably am saying stuff I probably should just put in my newsletter.
Yeah,
Charlottesville community engagement.
Newsletter.
So let's go back to leadership for a second, and I want to look at the both of you gentlemen and ask this question. I personally put a ton of time, a bunch of folks put a ton of time in the Regional Housing Partnership. The intent of that was to bring these 4 pillars, and just to go through it, is the public, private, nonprofits, and the people who we serve in UVA at the table. Are we making a difference? Is what I'm doing, all these hours I'm spending, helping? And these staff, are we getting to this point that you want to get to, which I want to get to, Sean, is where we're actually communicating.
I think you're making a difference, but I think you're losing.
And I mean that heartfeltly.
You're losing to the market.
I think
the
you
market
have
is beating your difference.
I think
We
that
can't keep up with it.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'll just say this. I mean, like, I'm not in the business of necessarily the real estate part of it, but I will say this, is that what I enjoy about that is that it does give the opportunity for these communities to actually have to talk to each other. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens when we've gone from a year of virtual meetings to all being in person. I think the last year has been kind of your glory days in a way, because you've had more of an audience than you've ever had. It's I love hearing what's happening in all the various communities, because of course, again, there was a woman, I believe, the representative whose name I don't know, from Nelson, the planning commissioner, who said at your last regional housing partnership that there's people down there who they're skeptical about affordable housing. It always seems like
we just talked about it with Jesse.
No, it's the planning commissioner whose name.
Got it. That's Margaret.
But the thing of it is, I think, yes, it's been more engagement, but the energy that was in the room, I think it was Good Friday 2019, when you held the confab with people from all over
in person
at the Omni.
That's happening again.
And there was more energy. I wrote an extensive piece on the shotgun approach to solving affordable housing, and I thought that was a great opportunity for the practitioners. This is what was missing in housing Albemarle that now they're trying to get to with the incentives.
Yeah.
Affordable housing does not happen unless people build affordable housing.
It doesn't happen in a vacuum either.
But also, let's look at the title of the plan. Your regional housing partnership plan, the title is Planning for Affordability.
Yeah.
And I think that, in some cases, I'm thinking, that there's part of me that, and this is, would like to move to another place in this region, just because I've lived in the same place for 15 years-ish. And I'd like to try something different. I'm looking at different.
I know a guy.
I'm looking at different areas. I'm not selling him a house, but I think that in the partnership, the question is that with a lot of it, does it have the buy-in of Charlottesville? And
it does. I will tell you, my partners that are from Charlottesville that are on the regional housing partnership are super engaged. Super engaged. Lloyd being one, Michael Payne being another. They're super engaged. As you know, if you watch it, they're super engaged. But I want to say thank you to you, Neil, because COVID really hurt us, right? But we had a ton of engagement. It's not a lot. What we do here is, I think, more impactful as far as viewership goes. But we had 50, 80 folks attending, which is good numbers for that.
So what's going to happen in post-COVID with these meetings coming back in person?
So that's a great question. So to answer Neil's thing, we will have a spring in-person thing. We're already in the process of working on it. This takes a lot of work, as you well know, and it takes a lot of money. So we're in raising money mode at the moment. So anybody wants to donate any money, we'll be happy to take it. As far as the public meetings, our next meetings are in person. The good news is
you have a virtual component to it.
We have a virtual component. The members themselves must attend unless there's an excuse, a valid excuse, and whoever the chairperson is, they have to accept that a valid excuse. So we're now back in person, but the beautiful part is Sean and Neil and you and the general public can participate remotely. We've kind of gotten this system that it's working pretty good. This was a benefit of COVID. What's
going to be interesting though is the production values, because as a person who's essentially a radio reporter, everybody has basically a fairly decent microphone in front of them. It's going to be really interesting to see how the sound quality and the video quality will be for those in-person meetings, because if it's just one big camera in the back, it's not going to be that same engagement because again like it's been so it's but that's not important right now.
But
actually that is an important.
We've seen citizens come forward with multiple PowerPoint in the virtual environment, and I applaud their ingenuity and their technology in doing so.
But I would say, though, that, I think...
Scott Ellett, giving you some props there.
That one thing is needed is more coverage. I mean, that's kind of what I'm banking on. Like, I remember, for instance, the Regional Housing Partnership. I should also throw out this is actually something that was part of Chip Boyle's tenure when he was at the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission and helped form not only the Regional Housing Partnership, but the Regional Transit Partnership, which is, is kind of yielding some thing, but there's also another us versus, I'll just say it, there's an us versus them thing there, which is counterproductive in a way, but maybe it isn't. I don't know.
We really don't have an us and them thing in a regional housing partnership. If you watch the meetings, we really do not have that at all. And I as a chairperson try to manage that so that doesn't happen.
Well, Jesse gets a little,
But that's just Jesse.
Actually, that's more the TJPDC. But I think
that's just Jesse being Jesse.
But I would say this: it's
Jesse, are you watching?
We love
tagged
Jesse.
You, Jesse.
Again, I would just say it's like this is a region that is finding its identity. I mean, for the first time. I know that, so when I first started at Charlottesville Tomorrow, we only covered and I'm not there anymore, but we only covered the city and Albemarle County. And increasingly, though, that's not the story. No. The story really is, heck, if I should be covering Orange to some extent. I should be covering over in the Valley.
Buckingham.
But also, too, it's that, where are the ideas you can get from other communities. I think that's the kind of thing. It's like you have, what's really great about about the planning for affordability approach is that there is a chapter for each community and each has a different strength. Louisa, for instance, there will be jobs in Louisa once that Shannon Hill Regional Business Park goes in. People are going to commute to those jobs. The manufacturing jobs and warehousing jobs, they're not coming to the city of Charlottesville.
Or Albemarle
County. Because the land is too expensive. But that's why in Fluvanna, for instance, this week they had that rezoning for the distribution facility, which I believe there's no name attached to it, but those are the types of things.
Didn't that pass?
I think so.
It passed yesterday, I believe.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. So
was
that's
it yesterday? Wait, that's Wednesday.
Wednesday. I'm sorry, today's Friday. It passed. Yeah.
But I would say that it's like I'm looking.
Which is a big get, by the way.
Yeah.
For Fluvanna County.
But I remember when you all did I think it was 2017, no, it was 2018, where you had that during TomTom, and you had 10 speakers come in.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of great information. The question is Charlottesville willing to listen to ideas from other communities and implement them?
Well, we were invited to TomTom. That wasn't something we set up.
Yeah, but I remember it was back in the old, but there was good stuff. And, how many people were there? How many people actually experienced that?
So what we're trying to do here on this show is, and just a plug out for future shows, everything you just talked about, Sean, I had a great conversation with Jesse yesterday. We're going to be bringing multiple roundtables where we'll have elected officials, planning directors, economic development directors. We're also bringing in school board candidates in school because we have to talk how those two connect to one another and how that impacts in some. So just kind of keep an eye out on this stuff somewhere between now and November, because what matters? Elections matters. We're going to be doing a bunch of these roundtables through that.
Well, and it's important to recognize, as some viewers may have come from up north, school boards here are different.
People don't
than
know
other
that,
places, and the Virginia model is driven by school boards not having the authority to raise money, only the authority to spend money.
That's exactly right.
And that's an important distinction for folks to understand, because many of the school boards become advocacy groups for locality spending. And of course they focus on the educational piece as well, but it is a challenge that is structural in Virginia.
There's a lot of disconnect that happens between school boards and board of supervisors and so forth and so on. So hopefully we're going to try to clear up
and
some
capacity issues always come down to questions of what's the best class size, what's the best building size. In Albemarle County, you have Albemarle High School, which was built in the mega school era, and right now everybody's in the big school era, where they want to have more big schools. I went to school 100 years ago in Loudoun County when Loudoun County had 4 high schools. They now have 16. So adjusting understandings for infrastructure that ties into the very development, the density that we're talking about, is critically important.
You can't have one conversation without the other.
And what's the role of government in providing the infrastructure and when to support the density that they say in their comp plans that they want? Because policies that simply pay lip service to density and then force you to go through a Byzantine approval process that's weighted against the very density you say you're for, prevents the density over the cause for neighborhood character, is a challenge to logic if you accept the growth projections.
And if I could just really quickly just say, it's like, and it's important to remember that there are pockets in Albemarle that are zoned R4.
Correct.
So for instance, Dunlora Forest, I think it is. So that was a situation where the county did preemptively upzone. But of course, that's then the people who moved into those neighborhoods didn't want the rezonings elsewhere. And I think that, again, it's like, this is a cultural shift. It's like, do we want other people to be us? And does this place want to be a city? There are people in this community who still don't want it to be a city.
I thought this was a world-class city.
I don't subscribe to
It's on the buses.
I thought it was on the letterhead.
It's on the letterhead.
Actually,
on the fire
originally,
trucks,
I was
too.
going to call my newsletter
cop
that.
car.
I was going to call my newsletter that at one point. But
World-class city?
Yeah, but sort of like with a question mark or something on it. But
You
then
got to be
again,
careful
I thought
with that.
was,
Our friend Brian Rothermill got into trouble
Yeah.
and won with that by using something on that.
The Fluco.
that's
God
right.
love Brian Rothermill.
But I think though that it's a cultural
Economic
thing,
development.
and I think I'm making a bet that with the journalism that we can do in this
Did I
community.
just hear a bet?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not a bet. I don't bet.
He's already made a bet.
Yeah.
This guy is on the ledge. He is
yeah.
an entrepreneur.
Without
So know that this stuff that he's doing is a risk,
Without
and he's
doubt.
doing it for the love of the community.
And also, too, it's because
Well
I
said,
think
sir.
that I love this community, but also I grew up in Lynchburg. To me, this community is a lot bigger than just here. And I'm part of, I'll just say, it's like there's part of me that's wondering is that this 29 corridor between Lynchburg and here, it's fascinating to me. You got Lovingston, you got Amherst, you have a lot of space between these areas, and just in between those ideas, to think of this, a lot of people think I-64 as their axis. I think of 29 because I go down to Lynchburg quite a lot to see my folks. There's the Central Virginia Training Center, which is now in mothballs. It's a huge campus. You can almost imagine somebody might buy that up. I mean, I'm not Jeff Bezos, but if I was,
You'd be on your way to space.
I would still be bald.
Or would you buy Fashion Square Mall?
Oh.
Did you see that it's going to be sold at Albemarle County Court steps?
No,
That's
it's
why I saved it for the end.
Yeah,
You saw
no,
that, right?
I haven't seen it
I
yet.
saw it.
Yeah.
This dog that I'm walking takes a long time, and you just give yourself over
But that's
to
not the
dog
whole
walking.
parcel.
Oh,
though.
yeah.
All
Yeah.
multiple parcels.
The entire parcel of the mall is going to be July 16th at 1 p.m.
Wow.
Albemarle County Circuit Court steps.
How much cash you got?
The Albemarle County tax records indicate
And-
the 18-acre parcel, including improvements, is valued at $16,125,900. The foreclosure notice was in the July 7th Daily Progress.
Wow.
And remember, the Places 29 plan has roads already laid out going through those
they
buildings.
have lines that are there advisory.
So there's a map with lines. Those lines are roads, people.
A $100,000 deposit by certified or cashiered check is required by the
day is
winning
it?
bidder. July 16th.
What are you doing July 16th?
So if we all played SimCity,
Friday.
so what would be really interesting though is that it's like
You called this, by
is
the
that
way.
how do
called
you
us.
if you were to develop that, how would you develop that? Could you grid a little town there? What would that look like?
Oh, yeah.
But I think though that one investor is going to want one big thing there. The question is, will somebody with a vision be willing to take a risk?
That's a live, work, play thing.
But
waiting
the
to
risk,
happen.
the risk piece, the same idea is when we talked about Biscuit Run, the risk piece, they ran the gauntlet, the Byzantine gauntlet. They got the approvals. In order to get the approvals, there was a steep pay in terms of proffers back in the day. Do you put yourself through that risk?
Well, I can tell you this much. There's nobody in this maybe one or two people in this, or entities in this space, this physical space.
Oh, I'm not going to say.
Well, I would say
the buyer here. Are you alluding to?
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is more than likely it'll be outside the state, outside the area.
But I would say this. I think
this is
So
going to
far,
be
the three letters haven't come up, Neil. Okay.
No, well, they're not going to. They're not going to buy it.
because I know they won't. So,
They're not going to buy it. They have other properties. But I think that this is, this is going to be really
One day
interesting.
we will talk about the UVA housing affordability plan.
I think
Someday,
this is a
at one
very
round
interesting
table.
venture. And it makes me want to remind people of an article I wrote. I wrote like a 3,000-word article, which few people read, but you can find it on my infocville.com archive site. I think it's going to take a public-private partnership. It's going to take something different there.
Johnny Ornalis says Stony Point, Chris Henry would be perfect for it. Johnny Ornalis, El Mariachi, he's a tenant of Stony Point, Chris Henry. Carol Thorpe, self-anointed world-class city by City Hall.
Hey, I think it's a pretty,
Isn't that just a brand?
No, but I think
a
it's
branding
It's
tag?
a tagline.
It's a tagline. I mean,
Nobody
like, it's-
said, "Hey, you are."
No, it's like, but again, this is I live here. This is a place I love. I don't want to live any place else. Well, England, but that's a whole other story. Pending my citizenship application, which
Talk
might
about England,
happening.
The Fashion Square news, I think a lot of people are now hearing for the first time.
Yeah.
Ray Cadell, you put that on my radar first. Ray Cadell is watching.
Ray.
So a week from today, Albemarle County Courthouse steps, you have a chance to purchase Fashion Square Mall, 18 acres,
Directly
entire
on,
parcel.
directly on 29.
On 29.
And what would be the best, highest use for that parcel, Keith?
Oh boy.
I would say micro apartments, studio micro apartments.
A brewery,
No, not a brewery.
One brewery,
a shrubbery.
a shrubbery.
Grayson is saying, Jerry, ask Neil and Sean what's going to happen with the parcel.
I don't know. I mean, but I think though that this is a very, part of I think people should again, as an exercise, people should look at that. And I think one thing, now that I know this, I now know how I'm going to spend my weekend, because there have been lots of studies. The University of Virginia's A School did this exercise in 2013, 2014,
Sean and
I think.
I walked up 29 with the A school students.
Really?
Did I do
true?
that? I don't. Did I?
You were there.
Oh, I do remember that. Kinda. I think I only went half. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the question is that even if it's not that parcel, again, it's like, what does this look like and what does it mean? And of course, because maybe somebody visionary buys it. And what I was going to say is that other communities have done this, and that the form-based code that is talked about for this area, and which has not been implemented anywhere really here.
So
But I was going to say is that a public-private partnership, there could be a great vision for this, but I will say this, the government can't be the only ones running it. There needs to be something that we haven't really seen in this community. Maybe we see it in Crozet with the Downtown Crozet initiative, maybe something of that scale. I'm not going to talk about that. But that's an interesting initiative. You've got Milestone that is trying to incentivize this public-private partnership. The downside there is you have a lot of folks who don't want the middle density that would go along to support that downtown.
You might want to read about that in the paper.
Yeah. And
So what did the man say when he sat down before we went live? I don't really have too much to say.
I don't.
Today. Literally.
I don't.
He said that.
Well, I think
The coffee's running out.
In answer to the question, I tend to agree with Jerry, which scares me, that it will be an outside investor that comes in. I don't know that that's the best thing,
I think that's terrible.
but I think that the amount of money involved and the long view, long play.
Precludes locals from doing this.
No, I
don't
disagree
think-
with
I
that.
don't
There's a
think it
couple of
precludes,
players.
there's a
What do you
But I
say,
think-
Corn and Chris?
if anybody from Liberty University is watching, this would be a good purchase, because if you looked at what they've done with River Ridge Mall down in Lynchburg, I'm just saying, it's like you might not want to do a tear down right away. Maybe there's a way to breathe new life into the mall. Maybe we have another pandemic.
I've actually walked that project. I've walked multiple projects around the country. That structure is not really set up for that. I can put my developer builder hat on.
Don't you think that's a teardown?
It's absolutely a
Yeah.
teardown. So if we were just the four of us,
buying the dirt.
Well, let's figure out.
But that's really well-located dirt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
So
And it has a fantastic grade-separated interchange.
I'm trying to get to answer his question, but he won't let me.
Sorry.
So it's a new shit. It's called the Sean Tubbs Show. It's
No,
okay.
I'm sorry.
It's
I
okay.
just,
okay.
I didn't
like
have
it. I
breakfast.
like
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
I didn't have breakfast.
I don't have anything to say today, guys. Okay. But look, I think the four of us get, whatever it is.
Rick Dennis is asking, what do you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, so
I'll look at the camera.
what I think it should be, let's not saying this what it should be or whatever, but if I was to put on my developer hat on at this point, this is a PPP, public-private partnership. You're going to have to bring in a bunch of different entities into it. It's a tear down, get to a clean slate. The struggle you're going to have with that is what do you do with the tenants? Because now you got to look at the tenant leases that you may not be able to do anything with this for quite some time.
The tenant leases are not going to last longer than the
they're
process.
expiring.
Yeah.
They're expiring. They're not renewing.
I'm just throwing it.
I
It's
understand.
not
Is that
that.
called sunsetting the leases?
They're going to let the.
What uses would you put on the parcel, Keith?
Are you trying to get me to answer the question?
Studio apartments, live, work, play.
So let's do a visual, much like come on, Richmond, short pump.
Okay.
A mixed, what's called mixed use, right? Retail,
Yeah, live,
work,
work, play, a lifestyle
like work, multifamily,
Like Stonefield.
but much bigger,
Yeah.
much bigger. So that's
Well, the
my-
original vision for Stonefield was multi-story buildings.
Yes.
and-
Yeah.
That would.
There's a little bit,
In the
that
first
died
phase.
in the,
But if-
as Albemarle Place, it died.
but if you,
Yeah.
Micro studio apartments with like the WeWork type setting, and that goes against my business, but I think that would work really well
yeah,
there.
so here's the key. It's not one, it's diversity. Not diversity in product, diversity in people, diversity in stores, diversity in workplaces. It's that word is diversity, which you tie to density. So density and diversity can be put together into that. But you're 100% right. It's got the water infrastructure, it's got the road infrastructure, it's got the bus stops to work on it. That's
So you're saying commercial and residential.
Absolutely.
In a multitude of different styles of residential.
That's exactly
to
right.
allow for higher density, since it's on the transit.
I've
line.
got this built in my head.
Dan Pettit says that's where the county offices should have been. And maybe the county courts.
So that's
That was
well,
discussed.
That's a
It was-
can of that's a
It was discussed. and
That
it
was
did
all
not happen.
discussed, but
That's
the
a-
court, but the county office building is still in play. There's nothing.
But that's where this
it could be a
PPP
5 or
comes
10
into
year
place.
period, and that's what I mean. I think
I don't
it would
the
do.
county courts would leave down.
No,
They can't
no,
now,
They
but-
can't now.
but there
they
was
could, They could have the county. The concept behind the county office building was that if you look at the population centers that don't live on the east side of the county,
Yeah.
it's closer to the population centers to be on North 29 than it is to be in the city.
But
of
it's also
Charlottesville.
multiple services. You can have Region 10 in there. You can have all these different services.
Is that the best use of the
I
land?
don't think that's the best use.
Well, also too,
No, no,
it's
no.
not in
it's-
that location.
No, the mixed part of it. How many acres is it?
18.
Yeah, that's a ton of acreage
Especially in that spot.
to develop.
between now and next Friday, what would be really useful would be to dig up a lot of the very recent studies. There's an economic development study that was pretty extensive that is now worth digging back up and looking through. The form-based code, which I still don't exactly know, have they adopted? They haven't adopted
So
that,
here's
have
the
they?
bet.
What's the bet?
Let's bet.
Okay, I like the bet.
I think it's going to be John
You got NBC
Dewberry.
29
No,
and CBS
that's
19.
not.
Johnny
That's
Dewberry.
that was Sean, who does not want to talk much today.
No,
Sean.
no.
So
but-
here's the-
He's being funny today. He's
Hey,
got
I'm-
good
I'm
jokes
just-
today.
I
So,
went for a
I'm-
run.
Johnny Dewberry owns the skeleton on the downtown mall, for those
And-
that don't know. The extorting emperor of empty lots, John Dewberry.
He's also
but
rented
landowner,
yeah.
large landowner
Yeah.
in Charlottesville.
But if you
I think I would be
There was a
careful
s-
not pointing fingers, but anyway.
But there was a story in the Jacksonville. His company is renovating a mall in
trying to make a bet
Jacksonville
here, guys.
at the moment. So that's a possibility. So John Dewberry.
What's your bet?
I had to get that out.
Keith?
Well, first we got to define what we're betting.
Okay.
You know,
Well, we need to know what the
We need to know what
parameters of the
the-
bet
yeah.
before we're
I-
going to
okay.
agree to what we're going to bet.
So my bet is that it doesn't sell at the foreclosure.
Your bet in a week from today, it does not sell.
It doesn't sell, and it ends up going back to the lenders. That I don't think.
What
you're
happens in that
Bachelor
situation?
Square Mall we're talking
Yeah,
guys.
so it's just like any other foreclosure, right? What happens is if somebody doesn't walk in and pays the whatever it is, on that thing. It's the foreclosure process. This auction is just the beginning of the process for the lenders to get their asset back. My suspicion is nobody's going to walk in there. Keith and Jerry are not going to walk in there with Neil's $18 million because he was a nice guy and he gave it to us.
16 million and change.
Well, it's probably
assessed.
Yeah, okay, 16 million, whatever the number is, right? And it's the assessment. You got to figure out what they owe and all these kind of different things. My bet is it does not. It goes back to the lender, and then it becomes a whole different conversation at that point.
And what happens then?
Well, then what it becomes is REO. It's a real estate-owned property,
And then it's brutal.
that process is super brutal.
Years.
Because you're negotiating with a lender
That's
who
right.
doesn't know anything about this at all,
Right.
and it becomes this huge. Been there, done this, folks. It becomes this huge, complicated.
So, folks, you're going to
process.
see this on NBC 29.
I hope I'm wrong.
CBS
I hope I'm
19,
wrong.
And in the Daily Progress, CVille Weekly, this Fashion Square Mall, going to the courthouse steps.
So we
And Sean's fabulous
Thank you.
publication.
rum. Are we
Thank you.
betting a bottle of rum? Is that what we're betting?
No, I'm not going to
Oh,
take
rum?
that bet.
I know better than to bet against Keith Smith in this environment.
Yeah, I know.
I don't bet.
I wouldn't take that bet.
I've been
So you
trying to
don't
get a
think-
free bottle of.
You don't think a
just buy the
Corn
bottle.
or a Chris would jump in this?
I may be totally wrong, and I hope that they do, right? Because I would prefer to have a local
Oh, heck yeah.
team on that end of it, and I have no inside information at all to share at this point. This is just four guys BSing over
Yeah.
a couple
I
of
tend
microphones.
not to have the same hesitance of outsiders as you do with regard to investment. I believe that the community is open for investment from anywhere.
And
Okay, would Albemarle County ever make this purchase?
No.
They can't afford. Well, they not at this time. If it was 5 years ago, and if there was an active plan to move the county office building, perhaps as a public-private partnership.
yeah, they don't want to be in the
The real estate ownership.
owners of business. So to answer your question, anybody coming in will be good. My preference,
Is a
that means
local
my
person.
first choice,
Yeah.
would be local because
too.
I love Chris Henry and everything he does, and their team would just knock it out of the park. If they got the appetite for that or not, it's a different story. But, if somebody comes in, if we have a big hedge fund that comes in and wants to do that, they become a little difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
Well, as the one who runs the free enterprise
Free.
forum, I'm a big believer in free
Free.
enterprise.
Free. Was this a commercial? Free? Is this a
Oh,
commercial?
shucks.
Oh, shucks. He kind of, you should put that up. He kind of looks a little bit like the mouse.
No, he doesn't. He does not look like the
the ears.
Intrastate
Dude, I'm
mouse.
telling you, you should put
No,
that
he
up.
Whiskers, kind of with. The
I got to
whiskers
look
now.
that up.
No, we
I
don't
think
need to
you
compare
model for the
Sean to the
mouse.
Intrastate mouse. Please,
Are we getting you another gig, Sean?
No,
No,
we're
no,
not
no,
going to
no,
give another
no.
gig.
Personal appearances?
I know.
That's sort of it.
You've got a meeting you got to get to.
He's got time. And
I got
he's
time.
enjoying
It's only
this.
down the road. But,
Got it.
He doesn't have anything else to say.
yeah, no. I'm hungry.
Was that a
Really
bet?
enjoy this.
Was that a bet? Let's bet if Sean can be quiet for the next 10 minutes. What do you think? Nope. That's kind of like betting on me doing that. That is not going to happen.
How many apartments can you put in an 18-acre parcel?
Man, my wheels are turning on that thing. So it would not be. You would.
Remember, the topography allows you to go higher than you would think because that parcel sinks down.
Right.
Yeah. So the very first thing somebody would do with that, if the four of us were going to do this, we would start doing massing diagrams, right? These are boxes and elevations and 3D things, and what is this going to look like from this road? What is this going to look from that road? It doesn't. You can just not build a 4-story or 5-story apartment building. These can be different geometric shapes where some of them are commercial, some of them are retail, some of them are residential on top of it. Oh, by the way, that's what they used to do back in the 1800s or whatever, right? The mom and pop store was on the bottom and they lived above it. So the vision I kind of have in my head is it's a geometric 3D.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does, but what we found locally, the commercial space underneath, we find that it's better to build to be commercial space, but allow it to be residential because commercial entities weren't renting it.
Yeah. So it required that's why I don't think somebody's just going to show up on next Friday with a check, unless, they want to just grab and hold or something like that. But just to come up with a vision, it's a lot more than 4 guys BSing on around a couple of microphones. It's going to be...
And getting a community vision. How long has
Yeah.
Milestone been working on that Crozet project?
Sure.
Well, that's-
Frank's been working
yeah.
on that forever.
But at least in that, but at least in this
Lumberyard?
case, yeah. But in this case, and no, I lost the bet.
He lost the bet.
But I would say in that case, what a lot of the holdup is the work with VDOT and trying to figure out a way to get the road connection.
Oh,
in
yeah.
this case,
That's already set up.
You have a brand new grade separated interchange that's right there. You have talk about Hillsdale Drive being relocated through that. That would likely be part of this potentially.
It's got Hillsdale. Also, what's the connector road that connects the...
Mall side.
That is an awesome road that connects the airport to...
Oh,
You're talking about
Earlysville
Birkmark.
Road.
Yeah, you're talking about
Birkmark.
Birkmark.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
Birkmark
is-
Extended.
I love-
Which was
I-
part of the 29 Solutions program
Yeah.
that we got instead of the bypass.
I mean, I would almost say, Keith, and this is
We got
this is
it.
for you. I
I'm
would
not,
say
I'm not taking that one.
16 million for 18 acres at that location. That's
But,
like
but we don't know if it's 16 million. So that may be what the tax assessment is.
Yeah.
What you're going to need to do is dig into how much they owe. So it's not what the tax assessment. If they owe $50 million, that's the number that's on the table.
I can't wait to read this. Because it is interesting because
And I
Washington.
pulled that number, so
Yeah.
anybody knows, way out of my
well,
area.
how does here's the
Ooh, look at
the
that.
progress because they have to advertise this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. What are they saying in there?
I mean, it's pretty small print. This is the notice of substitute trustee sale of real personal
Can't wait to
property
get to work.
located at 1600
So the way-
Railroad East.
The way this works, if we wanted to do this, we'd hire Bill
Tucker,
Bill
Charlottesville
Tucker,
Settlement Company.
Charlottesville Settlement.
There we go. There we go.
And to do a title
We're a
search on
sponsor
it.
of the show there.
Right.
You
So
got that show?
He's a.
So we would do a title search on it, figure out.
We should get Bill to talk about this.
Sure.
So how does the process go? If someone goes next Friday, and let's say they got $5 million, are they just trying to get something back?
No, so that's why you got to look how much is owed,
Okay.
right? But we don't know what's owed because nobody's done the homework.
So the offer cannot be.
No, the bank can accept anything it
It's a
wants.
short sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bank can accept anything it wants. But what potentially, I'm not saying this is the case here.
That's the dog.
Are we getting the hook? Is that what that is?
No.
I'm not saying that this isn't going to happen, or whatever, but the reality of it is we don't know what the number is until you go and take a look at what they owe on it. And it may be way more than tax assessed value.
Carol Thorpe says, I have an altruistic idea which never comes to pass, but I can dream. A housing, employment, and social community for our young adults and adults with special needs. We desperately need that in our area. My young adult son has to live in the Richmond area because there's little to nothing around here. Anyway, like I said, I can dream.
No, to go back to Barber, a great thing would be is a convention center.
Well, and I like.
We don't have one here.
I like the idea that Carol brings up of basically an assisted living facility as part of this tapestry of units.
Yeah.
I have
So the-
firsthand knowledge with this, and it is quite possible and preferable to have such institutionalized type situation at home in a community, in a neighborhood.
Sure.
It really builds that diversity and it builds strength.
Can I ask, just Keith, just if I could ask a question on this, what's the likelihood, or like, what would you say about the idea of somebody buying it and then subdividing it? Because it seems to me that maybe this is a place where if there were ownership opportunities in there, it's like, is that possible, or would somebody not want to break up such a large parcel at this time?
Yeah, so
where we are.
there could be ownership structures in there via condominiums set up, and you could do commercial condominiums, you could do residential condominiums. It'll be really hard to subdivide, what was it, 14 acres, 16?
18.
18 acres. It's just, that now you got set, it just would be really difficult
Yeah.
to do that. And I may be wrong if we're just playing crystal ball here,
Yeah.
because that's what we're doing. I'm not so sure that would pass muster with the county. I think if somebody wants to bring something in here, what we've been discussing is,
I push back on that.
Really?
I think they would accept. They don't really give two rats about who the ownership model, as much as there has to be someone to maintain what would be private roads.
so let me explain
what
it a
would be
little bit better.
cans.
When you
Okay.
start cutting it up, it reduces density tremendously. It becomes a different project than what we're talking about.
Right. But what I'm saying is I've seen projects approved that do this very thing.
Sure.
No, I'm just thinking well, yeah.
Again, my vision, it's my personal vision. I would take short pump, turn it to a 21st century version of short pump, mixed materials, mixed uses, mixed everything across the board. To steal your word, because I'm going to steal your phrase, and now I'm going to steal your word.
It could be Stonefield done better.
Thank you, but the tapestry, that's the word I was looking for. I was trying to come up with one word that would kind of visually do it, and it would be a tapestry of everything. And to me, I'm getting excited about even talking about it.
Remember, you're on 2, not 1, but 2 entrance corridors.
Yeah.
The ARB is in play on commercial properties.
Does that mean they get 2 votes?
So yes, no, maybe so. The reality of it is, so Neil, let's assume, hey, this is a great idea. I'm throwing you a softball, right? And we find out it's 16 million, whatever the number is, and we write a check. How long is it going to take from that until we actually do something?
Well, let's ask the question. I'm going to assume that it's going to be a change in use.
Yeah, total.
So that would be a rezoning. It would probably require first a zoning map amendment.
Yep.
So that zoning map amendment, you can budget 2 to 3 years. Then following that, you're going to get the rezoning itself, and that's another 2 to 3 years. And if we look at North Point, for example, that was a much longer, and it had a recession in there. There's lots of reasons, but probably before you see dirt moving, it's 15, 20 years.
That's exactly.
But this is different from that in the sense that a lot of the work at North Point was the grading and getting it up to speed. This is a brownfield, so you can imagine there might be incentives and different ways.
When did they start moving dirt? Approved in 2006. When did they start moving dirt?
But I think, though, that a couple things to factor, and I'm not saying that you're wrong.
I think your timeline's a little too long.
But I would say there's also a different leader. I mean, this is a different Albemarle County. The Albemarle County from 10, 15 years ago, yes.
But I think what matters?
Elections matter.
So, Sean, we just did this. We just bought this on Friday, right? And it's going to take us 6 to 12 months just to come up with a plan that we can present to somebody. Right.
It could
and
be
then
that,
we're going to go through that whole bringing in the comp, bringing the map into. Come on, help me out here.
The comp plan, the comp plan amendment.
Comp plan amendment, which is a couple of years. How many changeovers of supervisors we're going to have at that point? And we haven't even got to rezoning yet, which will have another changeover of supervisors, right? And then what the piece you missed on that, Neil, is the entitlement, is the site plan process, which is going to take probably the same length as the plan, the rezoning and the comp plan amendment, probably about 2 to 4 years, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'd say 3 or 4. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
No.
Are we keeping you up?
No, I was just, because it's exhausting to think about it taking that long. But I do think, though, that at least the difference is that this at least gives, at least now when we don't know who is going to purchase the thing, it's kind of this is the kind of thing that should get our imaginations kind of going about thinking,
Mine's
okay,
going
what
wild.
would we want this to be? And also, too, but it's not that there aren't plans and potential ideas that somebody could be doing their due diligence and have a plan. Every now and then,
but that costs money.
Yeah,
Sean.
but I still think, though, that a lot of it, though, again, I cannot wait to get into that. What's it called? The
notice?
The economic development.
Thank you.
Piece.
The
study
that's already been done. So in other words, some of that legwork might have already been done. And you kind of wish that the university did want it, because in some ways it
would be way easier.
But the other thing.
But they're not. Allison Rabel, they are not buying it.
Yeah.
Wait. No. She knows that. Wait,
yes.
Crap, I screwed.
Can
we take that again?
The idea behind
this is live?
This particular parcel is benefiting from a lack of a neighborhood around it.
Yep.
Because when you have neighbors around it that oppose change of any kind, and you talk about this kind of significant change.
So ask Scott, if this happens here, would he oppose it from Forest Lakes?
I'm not going to begin to speak for Scott, but I do believe that the concepts embodied in some of the things you've discussed, increased density, mixed use, coordinated development, Carol's idea of integrating some social services stuff, all of that stuff is really good stuff. And when you put it in, it becomes a very vibrant project with diversity that I think is exciting, but
I have to ask the question, is it viable in today's post-COVID market?
I would just say
So
something.
explain that.
Yeah.
The question of commercial space. Now, I know somebody who has some commercial space. I don't know how tenancy's going these days, but I have noticed in the last 2 weeks, traffic's beginning to uptick.
Sure.
We're starting to wait longer at shops for food. We're starting to see people coming out and going back to the office at least part-time. But there was a real question about commercial space. I don't know, I think Jerry talked about this about 3 weeks ago, going to Fashion Square Mall. And to me, when I heard you discuss that, I thought of what the downtown mall used to look like back in the 90s.
They don't even have the lights on anymore at the wings of Fashion Square Mall.
Well, it doesn't make sense to.
Right, it doesn't make sense.
And so the question is, okay, what are you doing so differently that location is going to support that opportunity for commercial use? Part of it is rooftops.
Yeah,
Part of
density.
it is just the density.
Yeah.
But part of it also is location. And will it work? I don't know. That's
Here's the
somebody else's
problem
market.
with this, and this is a great conversation to have, this crystal ball stuff, to go back to Sean's comment, but hey, let's dig up some other plans and look at great step one, right? But man, it's going to take 10 to 12 years before you can put somebody or a business into that. So what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to figure out what 12 years is going to look
that's
like.
brutal.
And that, and where the
That's
key.
why would the county consider buying this?
Well, the key,
Pipeline will have been built.
the pipeline.
Yeah.
Well,
The
2032.
key, or we would have had a bypass, or all these different things. The point I guess I'm trying to make here is whoever's going to come in and do this, it has to be flexible, and the documents, the governing documents for that have to. And I think Ned spoken to is about a living document. These things have to be able to adjust because what's in play today is going to be very, and I speak from an extremely personal.
It's very difficult to have zoning that is flexible. And people
I get that.
enforcing flexible zoning is a challenge.
Can I throw out an idea here?
Well,
though?
you can get away with that by building in some allowable
standards.
interpretation by zoning staff and stuff like that. You can clearly do that.
But there's a building that's not that dissimilar, not that far away, the old Comdial building, which is sort of a sleeper.
that?
It's on 29, and it's sort of a sleeper. If you didn't know it was back there, it's where Reason Beer is the only thing that comes to mind.
The high school center.
One, yeah, the high school center. I mean, it could be. It's like, maybe somebody figures out a way to do something like that in the short term while that's going on. I mean, again, there's creativity. And of course, there's ways of thinking. To go back to the Seminole Square Shopping Center, the younger principal at Great Eastern Management Company was like, the older person there, Chuck Rodkin, was like, why would we do this? This is not our business in this particular way. And, I think but yet, are the big anchor stores going to come back? And maybe not. Are we ever going to go back?
Or I'm seeing two
to 80s hair?
Norwegian stores open, Lidl and what's the other?
They're not Norwegian, my fine friend.
I think it's German.
Lidl?
Yeah, I was going to say.
They're German. A little
Oh, I
piece of
know.
information,
German. So
The
What's
German.
the other one? It's Aldi.
Aldi.
Who
Yeah.
owns
Aldi.
Trader Joe's?
My point being, those are entities that have reshaped the grocery model.
Sure.
And
But it's going to be
Amazon
different.
owns Whole Foods, and that's reshaped. And I will tell
Well,
you,
and Uber's buying grocery delivery services. I'm not even sure 10, 15 years down the road from now, we're going to be going into mega grocery stores.
So that's the
I'm
point.
never not going into a grocery store. That's the most fun you can have.
we really need to get you out more.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
Sean, you've got 10 minutes before your meeting. We can talk to you for another
We should try to
half
set
an
a
hour.
record here.
If I could just say just one thing about this particular property. So what you're hearing with the future land use map discussion a lot is people saying, well, why don't, and I'm not dissing these folks when I say this, but people you hear refrain, well, why don't you build that out first? Well, the question is, who is the who in that? But I
Yeah.
think that this is the ultimate test of that. Can this community build something new in that location?
And what does it depend on, Sean?
It depends on.
Elections matter.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, am I back in
That's what
school?
I always say.
It
A
depends.
willing
Safe
property
answer.
owner.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's
And
the
now
other
we have a
one.
situation where
Willing
somebody's
property
going to
owner.
come in
Remember that.
and potentially own this. Who is that person?
having
I
fun
mean,
yet?
there's
I'm having so
I'm
much
having a
fun.
great time.
like if this is a nationwide
Anybody
thing, there
watching?
could be somebody with a great vision. And I think this is now when it's like, I think a good reporter, and I'm not saying I'm a good reporter.
You
but
are a good reporter.
What I hope to do is I'm going to be looking now to see
Sean,
who could buy this.
Why? I'll say it again.
And I'm not kidding
does
about
Albemarle
Dewberry.
County not buy this?
yeah,
They don't have the capital up front
Why
to
would
do
you
it.
take such a positive commercial space out of the commercial real estate market?
Well, I mean, Albemarle could build whatever the hell it wants there.
Well,
So-
I think if they were willing
as
to
a rule of
move
thumb,
The municipality doesn't
local
want to own the real
governments should not be in the real estate owning business.
Okay.
And I'm just, if you go ahead and take a look at it historically, some are great successes, but more often than not, they're failures. For whatever reason, utilities is one thing. That basic services is something.
But you can co-locate.
Excuse me.
You can co-locate. They could.
So that's why this PPP is so important. I think that's
What's co-locate?
Let's take it back to Jerry and Newtown,
Okay.
outside of Williamson.
Yeah.
That was really started by the courts moving out there.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
That was the impetus.
Yeah.
And now you have a whole livelihood out there that has lots of parking, which is sometimes an issue in colonial Williamsburg, which has lots of parking lots. That it creates a vibrancy outside, and it grew the economic vitality of the region. Paul's has a second location.
Paul's Deli.
Paul's
God,
Deli
I love this
has a
guy.
second
I
location
love
in
Neil
Newtown.
Williamson.
So it is clear to me that there
Are
is
we
a
talking delis
potential-
now?
There is a potential to do this
Yeah.
with a jump start from the government,
That's what I'm saying.
but
Okay, got
not
it.
an entity purchase.
But they're not owning it. They
The
partner,
alternative
right?
is this stays.
They partner.
Alternative is this stays crappy and derelict and skeleton.
Yeah, well, you
for
mentioned
so long.
you mentioned the iStore over thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it has, and that's the path that I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
About if it becomes bank owned and
that's
it
way more visible than this thing on the downtown
and
mall.
it becomes
But
you're
property
shaking
owners have rights.
Yeah,
They
no,
have
no.
the right not to do something with
No,
their
no,
property.
I'm not. We're on the same page on that. I'm just saying what might happen, right? You could just sit derelict. It's common, by the way.
It is, and it might
the
be
mall
the best thing for that particular investor.
Again, well, that probably will not be as entertaining as what we're doing right now. So nothing's going to happen. But look, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity.
Huge opportunity.
This is an opportunity.
Are you getting on the phone and calling Chris Henry as soon as the show's over?
Chris is a smart guy. He
Yeah.
knows it's coming up, and if he wants to make a play, he'll make a play.
Yeah.
I wouldn't insult him by picking the phone
Gotcha,
up and doing
You
that.
know what I meant.
Yeah, I know what you meant.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. I'd wait 10 minutes, then I'd make
Yeah,
the
then
phone
you
call.
would call.
No, they know what's coming up just as much as this is the space that they're in. But I want to give you a little bit of a shout out, Sean, because I never. What?
He's allowed to talk. Yes, you're allowed to talk. Sean.
You are now allowed to talk.
The president of Town Crier Productions.
Producer.
Thank you for this production comment on the Regional Housing Partnership and engaging folks and listening to that. I never thought of that until you said it. So I don't know what I can do about it, but that's my first phone call, actually, when I walk out of here and say, okay, if we're doing this, we got to how do we do this?
I mean, I'm not so sure, but I would say, though, that I think that, we're in this new era. I'm looking forward. You're skipping this month, right? You're not meeting this month?
Yeah, I have no idea. It's
Yeah.
on my phone. I don't know.
I'm
I gotta
trying to
look at
think,
my
because I know
calendar.
that the Thomas Jefferson Plan.
I don't think we're doing
Commission
anything
meeting-
in July.
Yeah.
I think we're in
I think
August.
a lot of folks, and I think this is it. It's like, I always joke, there's never a dull week. I mean, I was kind of planning on next week being a nice, quiet week.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those CAC meetings, Neil's so happy that those aren't happening this month.
They won't do anything bad this month.
But
So I'm going to reach out to my dear
Yeah.
friend, Mr. Miller, who this is his field, and figure out how we can do that. It sounds like to me we need to have microphones in front of
Well,
people.
but again, it could but in some cases, I think this is going to be, there will be at some point, there's what are you really getting out of it? And I think that, this era that we've been in is I'm curious to see if people will continue. Now, I'm hopeful people will pay attention, and here's why.
I don't think they will, Sean.
I don't think they will either,
You
but
think-
that's
you think it-
kind of what
I'm
I
sorry
think.
to hear that.
But I'm making the bet, though, that there still needs to be journalism that connects people. The other night at the Barracks Road, Emmett Street shared use path discussion, there were people who were like, have you talked to, you shouldn't do anything with this because UVA hasn't been consulted, which wasn't true. But this is a project. The point is, all of this stuff matters. Keeping on top of it matters, and that's what I'm passionately trying to do because I really do love this stuff. And this, I'm really excited to look into this this information because I think that I think that Fashion Square Mall thing could be the real game changer for urban Albemarle, depending on how it happens and on what scale. And I do think the county could very much be a partner with it
What are you guys doing next Friday?
in the future. I'm going to be there. I will be on those steps.
1 o'clock.
Well, maybe I won't. My enemies will know. where I
We
am.
should rally up after that and have a conversation.
I'm really curious to see what happens.
What's you have to get out of here. I know you do. Is there an update you can give us on the beer garden with council?
Beer garden. Oh, that the Dora.
Yeah.
I think you'll
Keep swimming.
Yeah.
I would suggest, I don't know, man, you opened up a can of worms at the end there, but I would say it's probably not going to pass in the city. I would
Really?
imagine, I think that
Really?
there are 2 votes against it right now, probably a
I
third.
don't think Payne's against it. I know Nataya's against it.
I think that
Michael's not.
I think that there will be it will become the next 4th Street. There will be a group of people who will just be out to stop it without even necessarily understanding what the benefits might be. And I would say you will probably see it at Stonefield before you'll see it here.
Yeah, I think
because
you're gonna
because
see
I
it
think
in
Stonefield makes a
I
lot
think you'll
more
see it in
sense for
Scottsville before you see it in Stonefield.
You will see it in Scottsville. And now what this is that a locality, now Sina McGill had said this, and I think this is important to say. It's
should be
not
all of
just the mall.
Charlottesville, she said.
You get 3. I think under the terms of the new legislation, you get 3 of these designated,
Within your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
what's the designated outdoor recreation areas.
So what? Belmont, Ix, and the downtown mall.
Could be, or they could be West Main Street.
But Ix kind of has it already, right? There's these little. Well, I guess people just do it.
I think people are just doing it.
I said anything.
I don't think that's legal.
Yeah.
well, I would.
Oh.
Just doing it.
Really?
You did it.
Oops.
After your daughters
Mr.
left.
Gazzo's tacos.
He was there.
I saw it. I saw it.
But no, I don't.
ABC's not
You
watching,
really
is
don't
it?
think it's going to pass?
I don't think it's
This
even
is
going to
the
come
first-
back. I don't even think it's going to come back to council for a
No
while.
way.
It's
Do you agree with this?
I don't think there is I don't think there's an advocate on council for this issue.
There you go.
You don't think
Yeah.
Lloyd?
I think Lloyd's in favor of it, but it's different to be in
Sina's
favor of something.
brother is a restaurateur.
I think it's different to be in favor of something and to be an advocate for something.
Yeah.
And I think there's not an advocate on council for this.
That's pushing it through.
So, in other words, Mr. Payne is an advocate for affordable housing. He's an advocate for land trust. He's an advocate for all this stuff. He's constantly talking, but you don't hear a lot of conversation, public conversation about that. Is that what you're referring to?
That's what I'm referring to. And the right now, the politics are a little bit odd in some of because some of the reports that we're seeing from the Economic Development Authority and the funds that are being expended to support business, there are some people pushing back and saying those funds shouldn't be supporting business. They should be supporting affordable housing.
This may be just one of these election year punts. Nobody really wants to tackle it because it's an election year. Let's push it off to the next year.
I would, until there is someone that is an advocate
sure.
or a group of people that are advocates.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. Somebody may not want to put this moniker or this necklace around their neck in an election year and have them stick it on them, potentially.
Well,
DBAC is an advocate for this.
DBAC is an advocate for this, but DBAC's political power in the city is not as large as it once was.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it would be a shame. I think it's a good idea, personally.
Good ideas are important, and I think perhaps scaling it down to a pilot model might be a good idea.
Or maybe the city needs Scottsville and Stonefield to do it first to feel the pressure to do it.
Is that a proof of
It's called
Pop.
Pop.
Yeah, pop.
I like that. Huh? I like your scaled down idea, though.
well, I think
Go from the pavilion
It's a
to
code. The
Well,
code building.
no.
That
Well, I
would
think
be-
what you're talking
I'm talking
about.
about scaling it down.
Oh, from
Yeah.
Pavilion to Heather Higher Way?
Yeah,
something
there you
like
go.
that. And all of a sudden, you've got a more controlled area,
Yeah.
and you're giving something.
Well, they're
Yeah.
doing
because
it
you've
now.
got your family-friendly section and not as family-friendly.
Yeah.
I think that's probably...
That's a good pitch.
That
Hey.
wouldn't necessarily be fair, though, to the restaurants on the code building side of the mall.
No,
though.
it wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
No.
It wouldn't be fair.
It would prioritize the ones on the pavilion
But,
side.
Yeah,
it-
but-
it's always the politics of the possible.
Yeah. So
Politics
this,
of the
Politics of
so
the
this may,
possible.
Good, right.
yeah, another one I got to write down. I just don't want to write it down
Williamson.
anymore. But so that may be like a pop, like a beta test to say, okay, because you're kind of doing it already, right? On Fridays after 5, it's contained, it's in, right? That's what's happening. And I know that we attend them quite a bit. And we'll have our drink over there. And we'll walk down to
Yeah, but
Christian's and get a
the
pizza.
restaurants on the code building side of the mall, the movie theater side of the mall, are the restaurants that are actually owned by local restaurateurs. And the restaurants on the pavilion side of the mall are restaurants owned by
So I'll tell you what
super wealthy people, and not people that their living is tied to what happens in that restaurant.
So I'll tell you what we do when Fridays after 5 is going, my wife and I, is we'll go there, we'll have a beer, listen to the band or whatever it
And
is.
then walk the mall to find a spot to eat.
Well, we'll have reservations already, but we'll go down to Brasserie or whatever, Alley Light or any of Wilson Ritchie's wonderful places. But that's what we do, and what we'll do is we'll purposely get away from that portion and go and that's just how we do it. It may sound a bit elitist, but
Well,
that's
I mean,
that's how we do it.
where Sean does it is Court Square Tavern or Rapture.
All Rapture. Yeah, I was going to say.
CST's out of the mix now.
Oh, CST's out of the mix?
I don't think
Completely?
they're not open at night. I think, and
And you do what there? What do you do at Rapture?
Happy hour.
He
Karaoke.
produces his
No,
content.
karaoke. Well, no,
You sing, don't you?
I can't talk about Rapture too much right now, but
Okay.
yeah, because yeah.
Did you get kicked out? Is that what
No,
happened?
gosh, no. Yeah, but it.
Are you banned from
Can I?
Rapture?
No, God, no. It's
No, are you working?
no, I'm not working there. I just don't want any. Well, it's happy hour. It's the best happy hour in town.
It
There,
is the best
I said
happy
it. It's the best
It
happy
is
hour
the
in
best
town.
happy hour in town.
And I will be there at 5:00 tonight.
He's
You
talking
can
price
almost
5:00.
guarantee it. Don't show up though.
This is
And then, yeah.
The Sean Tubb Show. We're just going to change this.
No,
to
no, gosh. I'm
this
just
is
hungry.
the longest show we've ever done.
Oh gosh.
It's after 12. You missed your appointment, brother. You
I
better
haven't
send-
missed it. I sent him a message. It's an informal thing.
Okay, got it.
Keith Smith, Neil Williamson, Sean Tubbs. My name is Jerry. This is Real Talk. The show
And?
is Judah Wickhauer. The rattling you hear from time to time is Liza the dog. This is Real Talk presented by Yes.
I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he can keep up all these cameras moving and all this stuff, but
The guy's trading stocks over there.
He's playing
Is
Minecraft.
that-
Yeah, I think he's
Playing Minecraft.
Yeah. He's buying GameStop
Oh, good.
and AMC
Yeah,
over there.
I'll be right there, person
did
who
he
I'm
just
meeting.
rat you out?
Are they watching you?
Yeah.
On the show?
They are.
He says they
Hello.
will be right there.
He hasn't left yet.
No.
No, well, it's
I
not
love
a-
you guys.
It's
This
not a
is
long
I
walk.
find this is so fun.
I have to talk. Yona, my wife, Yona, asked me this morning who's on today, and I said Neil and Sean. She says you're going to have fun today. I said absolutely.
This is so fun.
Yeah, I enjoy the heck out of it.
I just can't believe I got scooped by Jerry Miller.
No, it was in the Daily Progress.
I can't believe I got. Well, those guys, it's fine.
It was in the foreclosure notice. Was in the Progress.
Yeah, but did they write about it? That's
No,
the question.
they- I
That's what
know.
I mean. It's like
We have.
I have seen it in the mainstream media.
Where? Which
Where?
one?
I have to go back and look, but I did see it last night.
It's not.
So
not on
what is
NBC
this term
29.
mainstream media? What does it actually mean?
TV,
in
radio,
today's
print?
world.
it's I don't know.
It might have been through one of their social media posts.
Got it.
But
Dude, you want to hear something? This is so crazy. So we started talking about this, 35 minutes ago? NBC 29, which was watching the show, just turned this into a story 12 minutes ago.
Scoundrels.
Did you see that? They watched the show and literally just put 4 sentences 12 minutes ago.
Did we
you
at least get a reference from it?
Can you give Real Talk a little props over there? NBC 29, Jesus. Oh, I guess now the nitty gritty is going to be in this man's brand.
No, it's like, but I will say this about
You literally see this, right,
yeah,
guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's 4 lines. You know.
4 lines.
And how
the
many of
4
those words
lines
are-
were
I'm not gonna
everything
diss-
Sean just said?
I'm not going to diss 29.
No, we're not dissing them either.
I support all of everybody in
all
media.
I
Yep.
agree. All right, we got to get out of here.
I'm rather partial, to be honest.
Yeah,
with
you want to real
rather
talk.
partial. Do we want to get together and talk about this after we'll talk offline?
Yeah.
we'll talk
Instead of
offline.
waiting a month. instead of waiting a month?
We'll see. Let's
Okay.
wait and see.
Sure.
Check schedules.
Nancy Gill at 12:30, guys. Thank you
Ooh.
for joining us on a record-long Real Talk.
That's in
on a
20
Friday.
minutes. Good luck.
I know. He's the one.
Starved.
Thank
He's
you for
trading
joining us.
stocks. I
Take care, guys.
See ya. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Of course not.
And you would think the Daily Progress would write something about it. I bet you
We're off, right? We're completely off. I mean, they don't have any. I mean, that's the